Welcome back to Inside Politics. Our guest today is Tennessee House Speaker Beth Harwell. She's speaking to us right after the end of the first year of the 109th Tennessee General Assembly's two-year session. Speaker Harwell, I think another issue will be remembered about this particular session was Insure Tennessee. It is just being proposed by the governor. Back when we last talked with you in January, you had good things to say about it in general, but you never committed to being in favor of it. It was rejected twice, both in the Senate while it was before you this particular year. So where are you now? Have you decided to be in favor of Insure Tennessee?
I met with the governor just yesterday, and we did discuss this. Even the governor said, as of yesterday, this is a very complex issue, and we're going to have to take some time for everyone to understand it. Very difficult to do in a week-long session, which is what he preferred. It'd just be a week-long. I would have preferred that we had the entire legislative session to be able to debate it and discuss it. And we'll head that way. It's an issue that's not going to go away.
What changes need to be made to make it more palatable to you and your members?
Well, I think a couple things. Number one, it needs to be in writing. In all my years of service in the General Assembly, I've never been asked to vote on something that wasn't in writing.
Even the second time around, you still didn't have it in writing?
And we did not have it in writing. And number two, I think that we have to have assurance that if these folks are put onto the program and the money goes away at any point in time, which the federal government is notorious for taking the money away, we would have to be assured that we would not have any lawsuits against the state should people have to be let off of this program, because that was an extremely costly process that we went under Governor Phil Bredesen when he took these same people off the rolls that now we're putting back on.
You mentioned sort of helping your members on this, but you also represent your constituents, and you did a survey of the voters in your district, and it may not have been as scientific as you might have liked it to be, but it did indicate that residents, 56% of the respondents, said they were in favor of Insure Tennessee. What role does that play in you making up your mind about supporting legislation?
Well, I always listen to constituents. I should clarify that was not in my district. That was a statewide poll because I put it on my internet. So it was available to a lot of people across the state.
But that doesn't sway you necessarily to say, well,
sure. It forced me to keep an open mind about this, to continue to look at things. We have a lot of questions to answer. Our TennCare budget, we put another $200 million in it this year. It continues to grow every year. When Phil Bredesen took people off the rolls, it was 31% of our budget. Now we're up to 33% of our budget. Our traditional TennCare program continues to grow. I would love to see the federal government allow us to have more flexibility there to keep our costs contained.
Instead, the federal government officials are now talking to the state about, well, if you're not going to expand your Medicaid program, we want to look at the other monies that we give you in terms of uncompensated care for indigent people. Do you see that as a possible club or threat to get Tennessee to come along and approve the program?
Well, I think the governor certainly sees it that way. I do as well. And the tragedy of that is it's the height of hypocrisy. That clearly indicates that this administration cares more about the proposal than they do the poor people that we're trying to provide care for. How dare they try to take that money away?
Now, you've taken some heat because in both cases the bill was killed in the Senate, in Senate committees. The House, neither House committee nor the full House ever got a chance to take a vote on this. Do you have any regrets that you didn't go ahead and allow your members across the board, all 99 to have an opportunity to get up on the board and vote green?
I believe that we could have gotten it out of the subcommittee. I don't believe we could have gotten out of the full insurance committee. I don't think I polled each individual member, looked each Republican member in the eye and asked them how they would vote. We had 17 positive votes from Republicans. That's not enough to take anything to the floor. This is an educational process. We'll continue to work on it.
It might have died, and certainly you don't have the authority under the rules just to bring legislation to the floor.
No, I do not.
But you could bring to the floor the idea of suspending the rules for that to be considered.
That would take a two-thirds vote.
It would, but what about the idea of at least giving them the opportunity as sort of having a test vote on that, but at least have people to say, well, there was a vote taken about it. Well, and the House rejected it because they wouldn't suspend the rules.
I can't think of any speakership that has allowed that to happen. Again, I cannot do that on my own. That would take two-thirds body. If we don't have enough votes to pass it, we're certainly not going to get enough votes to suspend the rules. But I will say that committees serve a very valuable purpose. What people don't understand is we would not have been allowed to have any testimony had that been the case. You can't have any testifying on the House floor. That has to all take place in the committees. There was no way we would have ever possibly understood this program had it been on the floor.
Now, certainly the media has covered this. The Tennessean, in particular, the morning paper here in Nashville, has taken quite an aggressive stand on this. It's been on the front page, the editorial page, and throughout the paper. Do you think their coverage has been fair? Is it making your members mad? Is it making any difference?
Well, I think most consumers, most people that read the newspaper and watch the news really want a balanced approach. And there are some wonderful things to be said about this program, and there are also some things that need to be pointed out that we need to be cautioned about. So I think what I would like to see is these are the pros of the program, and these are also the cons, and these are the things that the state needs to look at and make sure they have in place before they take another step forward. That, I think, would have been very helpful. You know, as far as influencing my Republican legislators, I think most of them see the newspaper's rather Democratic. This is the same newspaper that pushed us to pass the state income tax. That's how most of my Republican members see it.
Now, you mentioned the need for testimony for the lawmakers to get more information. What about the opportunity to have a study session in the summer here about Insure Tennessee? I think speakers could establish those. It's done lots of times, especially for legislation that doesn't necessarily seem to have much chance of passage. So is a summer study session something you and Speaker Ramsey might want to look at?
I can't speak for the Lieutenant Governor. I've already talked to my chair of Commerce and Insurance, and we're going to continue to look at this and gather information and actually seek outside counsel.
Outside counsel?
Groups outside of state government to help us understand and get where we need to be on this.
Do you expect that will be a committee of the state legislature this summer holding a meeting and bringing people in to testify?
I'm not sure how we'll set it up right now.
Now, the governor says that he's still in support of the program. He'd like to push it forward, but he's not ready to bring back another special session. From what I've heard from you, you don't think a special session is a good idea even for a second time. You'd rather it come back and be dealt with in the regular order of business when you come back in January.
Yes.
And that's just because it's too much of a hothouse atmosphere and you can't really get anything done in that compressed amount of time?
Exactly.
Would it make any difference what happens with the Supreme Court this summer? In June, they're probably going to rule on another challenge to the Affordable Care Act. If the law is upheld once again, doesn't that remove another reason not to do Insure Tennessee?
It does, and if it's not upheld, we would have made a mistake by going forward. So it really does change the whole nature of federal exchanges, which is what we have in Tennessee. We don't have a state exchange, we have a federal exchange. If they rule that they violate the law, we're all going to have to come back to the table. So we might be in a position to even reform our traditional program.
House Speaker Beth Harwell is our guest here today on Inside Politics. We've been talking about what's going on with the last session of the General Assembly just ended this past week. Back to continue our conversation after this break.